Friends, hello. How are you? How's it going? How is life? This is Carter. Welcome to this episode of Making It Up, my podcast where I invite people to come on and tell me a little bit about their history as it relates to writing. And it's always fascinating to hear about how people get pulled into writing, drawn in. Either it's been something that they wanted to do their whole life or just something that just suddenly happened, like in my case. And, their journey can take pauses, and sometimes their journey takes decades. And that's definitely definitely what happened with today's guest, which I'll get to in just a moment. Just quickly going to mention, I am doing a seminar, an online seminar, a 2-hour online seminar. I haven't totally figured it out yet, but by the time that this episode is out there, it's going to be all set in stone. But it's going to be essentially a 2 to 3 hour thriller writing seminar online that's going to be taking place in October. So it's going to be a little bit about the psychology of writing and kind of motivation, and then really hitting the elements of thriller writing, suspense, pacing, all that good stuff. So if you're interested in that, like I mentioned, it's going to be online, so anyone can join. And you can just go to unboundwriter.com and it's all going to be listed on there. So check that out. So today I talked to Jeffrey Konvitz. Jeffrey Konvitz. Sorry, Jeff, if I pronounced your name slightly incorrectly there. So Jeff has got a great story. We both went to school at the same location at Cornell, so we talked a little bit about that. But he essentially went to law school and didn't practice for 11 years after getting after graduating law school. He moved out to Los Angeles and kind of got into the entertainment industry there. And then he just had an idea for a book, actually a 1-sentence idea for a book. And that book became the Sentinel, which was put out in the 70s and sold about 5 to 6 million copies. So just the first thing he ever wrote just went bonkers and sold a ton of copies. And he had a couple follow-up books after that we discussed a little bit. And then he got kind of, I don't know if disgusted is the right word, but there was a lot happening with him in the publishing industry back then that caused him to just kind of put the pen down. And he went and he leaned heavily into the entertainment industry, became an entertainment finance attorney, wrote screenplays, but he was not writing novels. But he had started his most current novel, which is now out, called The Circus of Satan, back then, and didn't pick it back up until the mid-90s, and then didn't finish it until about 2020. And it is out now, and it focuses on the Irish mob running kind of organized crime in America from 1900 to 1912. And we go into length talking about that book in particular. But so he's had this very long career, very long journey, and he's now kind of refocusing on writing novels as well. So there's, he's seen an industry that has changed massively in the last 50 years. And, with the advent of self-publishing, that's a route that he was able to take with this latest book, simply because he wanted his book his way. And, hopefully it'll become, in his words, adapted into a miniseries or kind of an epic movie. So fascinating conversation. He's been surrounded by storytelling his entire career in one form or another. There's a lot of good advice in this one, particularly in terms of sticking to it, even if there are decades-long gaps in between efforts. So it's hugely inspirational. I think you're going to like this. This is my conversation with Jeffrey Konvitz. So reading your bio, I see one thing immediately that we have in common, and that's we both went to Cornell.
You're kidding.
Yeah, I come from a long line of Cornellians, starting with my grandparents who were class of 28 and 29, and I was hotel school class of 92.
Well, we have a big Cornell contingent. My cousin founded the School of Industrial Labor Relations,
Oh, no kidding. ILR. Yeah. Wow.
Milton Konvitz, and he was a legend there. His son, may he rest in peace, was the year after me. Then I was there, and then my youngest daughter just got graduated summa cum laude in economics from Cornell, and
Wild.
it's a and my cousins are there. It's a big Cornell.
Yeah. That's so wild. Yeah, it's funny because my sister ended up going back to get her PhD there, married her professor, so they live in Ithaca. So their kids went to Cornell. And my grandfather, he was the director of Willard Street Hall for 45 years. So yeah, so I grew up going to Ithaca, New York quite a bit.
When it was different in Willis Straight Hall that I used to eat my meals.
Yep.
Downstairs, I was a member of the Cornell Dramatic Club. We do our musicals. That's no longer there. It's at the Schwartz Center.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's very different than when I was there. It's a lot bigger.
yeah.
But every time I go back, I get chills.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
totally. Yeah, it's that connection. Now you've obviously spent your life and your career kind of in the world of storytelling, but you were saying you were in the drama club at Cornell. Is that kind of where it all started, or were you a dreamer well before then?
Not really. I did. I played Milas Gloriosus, and funny thing happened the way to the Forum, and
Hmm.
Billy Bigelow my mind is going in what's the name of the Rogers and Hammerstein,
You're going to know better than me, so
whatever. It's one of those days.
yeah.
But no, I always had a penchant for that. Uh, but it really came later. I was pre-med there. I was a chemistry and physics major.
Oh, wow, wow. Okay. And then you graduated and then what?
Well, the interesting thing is that at the end, I took the LSAT and the MSAT, MCAT, whatever they called it in those days, and I got into medical school
Yeah.
at Columbia. And then at the last minute, I said, I want to be a surgeon 12 years. I called over to the law school and someone had dropped out and there was a space. So I went over there,
Just like that.
right to the law school. And my older daughter went to Columbia too. So we're a Columbia Cornell grouping.
But I don't know if it's funny because my daughter just started law school and her boyfriend just started medical school. And so I look at these kids and it feels like that planning to go to that extended education starts years in advance at this point. There's no like last minute, I'm not going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a lawyer kind of a thing. That feels weird to me that you were able to do that, but
Well,
maybe
there
it
was a
was.
third choice, go to Vietnam and fight.
Oh, okay. Well, so yeah, which one of these god awful things do I want to do the least?
Yeah, I said there was a course at Columbia Law School, a 2-week course called Legal Method that was so horrendous. It meant eight in the morning till 12, 1 hour break, and then till 7 o'clock, and you worked all night. And one day I said, maybe I should just go go to Vietnam. It's easier.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's a crazy time that you were kind of going through this thought process, but then you go the law school route, and then as you're in school, are you like, are you finding like this resonates with you, or you're like, oh my God, am I really going to be a lawyer?
Well, the funny thing is, I spent more time with the Law Review comedy show as the director producer with the
Yeah.
professors than I did with with anything else.
Yeah.
I always distinctly remember there was one professor who I had an address named Telford Taylor. He was the chief prosecutor at Nuremberg
Oh my goodness.
for all the trials except the main
Wow.
trial where he was number two. Justice Robert Jackson was the chief prosecutor. He was
Hmm.
number two, and then Jackson went back to the Supreme Court. He took over everything. I had him in a dress singing stupid songs, And I mean, I just kept thinking, this guy was standing there with all these Nazis, and
That's
now he has me.
that's yeah, that's a really like strange image to kind of conjure is like
I thought about that many times. This is so weird.
that is really weird. But
He probably said, "You're worse than all the Nazis I had to prosecute."
oh my God. So, yeah, but that's, I find that fascinating that, in school we do these things like we clubs and things like that, like just to keep us kind of our time occupied. But a lot of times those are the things that we really want to do. And either we're unwilling to admit it or we have familial pressure. You've got to be a doctor. You've got to be a lawyer. I don't know if that was the case with you, but
When I
did
do,
you?
when I decided not to go to medical school, I think my mother tried to hang herself.
And like, don't do that because I won't know how to save you because I'm not a doctor.
It was like suicide time. What?
Yeah, that's, I mean, not to stereotype, but that is a very kind of Jewish family, doctor, lawyer. And did you have siblings who were kind of following those kind of paths?
No, and the funny thing is, Carter, medicine is one of my hobbies. If you look behind me, above all the law books, there's a whole shelf of medicine. I know more about medicine than most doctors.
Wow. Wow. You never hear about medicine being a hobby.
It was my hot. Well, I did invest in biotech, so I had to get myself up to speed. But not that I was so successful, but it always fascinated me. But it's one of my
Interesting.
hobbies, that cosmology and history. For a fiction author who's been
Right.
successful, I don't read fiction. I read nonfiction.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I read almost exclusively nonfiction,
Yeah.
and I don't read thrillers unless unless something really is really hit, or if something I'm being asked to blurb, or if I'm judging a contest or whatever. And but I love to learn, and there's nothing more exciting than nonfiction to be like, oh, this shit really happened. That makes it all the more interesting. And now I
I
know
was sitting.
something.
I was sitting having lunch, and a friend of mine walked up to me and said, "What are you reading?" And I said, "String theory." He said, "What's that?" I said, "Well,
If I have to explain it, you're not going to get it.
it's super advanced multi-dimensional theories in
Yeah,
26 dimensions." And they
but it's
said,
fascinating.
what are you talking about?" I read all this stuff. Kip Thorne, I got tons of books on this. You
Yeah.
know, I'm a weird guy.
Well, no, it's, I mean, all that stuff is interesting because it's all the mysteries of not only the physical world, but the extra dimensional world, like
Yeah.
trying to just find the sense and everything. So and that totally ties into cosmology, and yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. But when did you come out of law school armed with a degree and presumably you take the bar, but you kind of went into the entertainment field with that law degree, right? So you were kind of trying to find that, like, it was pulling you, it feels like.
Well, I didn't practice for 11 years.
Oh wow.
It kind of, I abandoned it immediately, right
and
out of
and
law,
then your
right,
mother wanted to hang herself again.
shoot itself. Except for the fact that 4 years later, when the Sentinel sold 6 million copies, she changed her tune.
Well, so let's talk about that because that was obviously clearly your breakout book. Where in your life did you have the nerve to think you could write a book?
Well, first of all, let's be very clear. My first creative writing paper, which was required at Cornell, I got a D, and the professor wrote, "You are illiterate." So I figured, well, that's a problem. I wound up getting a B in the course. Uh, and then, of course, I then went back to, it was very funny. I would take a course in quantum mechanics or some ridiculous thing like that, or the hardest course I've ever taken, advanced organic chemistry.
Hmm.
I'd get a B minus, and I'd run over and take a course in history and get an A. So I would balance myself out.
Yeah, right, right, right,
At least I understood the history
right,
courses.
right, right, right. But when did you start writing? Was the Sentinel the first novel that you wrote?
First thing I ever wrote,
Wow.
out of the blue. Well, I did written legal papers, but I didn't practice law at all. I immediately went into the talent agency business with one of the biggest talent agencies in the business, which is now part of Creative Artist Agents. It's all merged.
Yeah.
And then I left there to become vice president of production at MGM in 1973. So I was out of the writing business.
Wow. Wow.
But I wrote the Sentinel at night while I was doing all this.
And was that because you just had this idea, or was it this, I want to write a book just to see if I can?
Believe it or not, it was a one sentence idea that popped into my head at 3 o'clock in the morning one night when I couldn't sleep and I couldn't figure out what to do with it. And then I looked at my bookshelves. I was a minor in philosophy, and I focused on two books, Paradise Lost and Dante's Inferno, and I said, the key is in there. So it was really a one sentence idea.
That's amazing. And a lot of times the next day after a 3 a.m. kind of idea, you look at that idea like, this is a terrible idea, but apparently not for you.
This was the heart of the book. It was the good idea. The whole book was built around it.
So, and so now we're talking the 70s, right?
Yeah.
So the Sentinel comes out, and obviously the publishing industry is very different back then. Did you have to get a literary agent, or were you able to just go straight to a publisher with that?
Well, what happened was I wrote it first as a screenplay, and one of my close friends at the time, I was at a company called CMA, which became
Sure.
ICM,
Yeah.
which became now CAA. It's
Right.
IFA was merging. It was all
Bunch of letters.
And one of my friends was a young literary agent at William Morris, and he read this. I submitted the script to two studios, and of course, I took meetings. Like clearly, they hadn't read it; they read coverage. I walked out, was depressed. He read it and said, "This should be a book." I said, "What's a book?" He says,
And usually you get the exact opposite advice.
"This should be a book."
Right.
What do I know about a book? So the interesting thing was I then wrote it. And I remember his reaction in reading it was, I got one suggestion. I said, what's that? He said, cut the first 150 pages. I said, are you out of your mind? It's the background, it's the people, it's the characters. Let me edit it. And I edited it and edited it and edited it, and it wound up to be a page and a half in the book.
Wow. Yeah, that's the advice that still exists today. It's like especially depending on what you're writing, obviously, but if you're writing mystery, thriller, suspense, get to it within paragraphs. Like all that other stuff can either be cut or they can be very subtly one sentence here and there layered in. The reader will understand. They'll get it. They'll fill in the blanks themselves.
Well, what I learned from that, because the big explosion of the book takes place on about page 120, and people who read that one page, that was it. They were locked.
Yeah.
Everything they'd been reading to that point was reversed.
That's so interesting.
And shocking. And they said, what? What? Everyone was going, what?
Yeah, because 70s and 80s, you did have a lot more license to go on, I think.
Well, the book difference was different. In the 70s, the hardcover business was garbage. If you sold 10,000, you were a bestseller.
Yeah.
The whole business was mass market paperback.
Yeah.
I did okay in hardcover with the Sentinel, but mass market went to 52 printings.
That's crazy. Yeah. I mean, 6 million copies is unbelievable. And
6 million. I can't even track
yeah.
it.
Yeah. So
everywhere I went, people were reading it everywhere.
That's such a weird feeling.
Can't tell you the number of women I picked up.
So this happens, and then that must be very beyond eye-opening in the sense of, is this what I'm supposed to do with my life? Did you have those moments, or are you just like, okay, that was cool. I guess everything I touch turns to gold.
Well, it was a state of shock. I wasn't practicing law. I had moved to California with MGMs, so I wasn't a member of the California bar. I was a member of the New York bar.
Hmm.
And the deals came at me so fast. The sequel to the Sentinel, they paid me a fortune for, and that was a tragic story. And then I wrote another book, and at one point in 1979, I said, I've had it, and I flipped completely into the movie business and
Hmm.
didn't write again for 16 years.
Not even screenplays.
Screenplays I wrote.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, well, why was the follow-up a tragic story?
Well, I guess I can tell it. The when the Sentinel came out, I was the producer of the film, and they arranged a book tour. Got the hiccups. And Simon and Schuster was supposed to put up half the money, and Universal was supposed to put up half, which they did. And then Universal found out that they'd used Universal's money, and they didn't put up a dime.
Hmm.
And I went nuts on
For
my head.
this is for the tour you're talking about? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I went ballistic on my editor because Universal said, "How are we going to let you produce a $6 million movie if you can't control this woman at Simon and Schuster?" Well, the bad news was, and I'm going to tell you the story direct.
Okay.
The I made this giant book deal at Putnam. They read three-quarters of the book and said it's our lead book for the year, the sequel, The Guardian.
Yeah.
And then I get a call from my agent 3 days before I turned in the book. He says, "You want the bad news or the horrible news?"
Oh God.
I said, "What's the bad news?" He says, "Your publisher and editor were fired yesterday." I said, "That's the worst thing I've ever heard." He says, "No, it isn't. They hired your editor from Simon and Schuster as
Oh.
publisher and editor in chief." She canceled the book.
Oh my God. Wow. But yet it came out.
Well, we moved it over to Bantam, but it came out as mass market paperback rather than their lead hardcover of the year. That virtually knocked me out of the book business, although I did write another book because I was already writing it.
So did you have a conversation with the new editor who you obviously already knew in terms of, was this spiteful? Was it just you don't like the book?
She wouldn't talk to me because she knew how explosive I was. In those days, I had a rather fierce temper. One of the things that calmed my temper down was that when I became a litigator.
Yeah.
If anyone got on my bad side, I just sued them.
So, yeah, I mean, I can see how that is. I mean, your whole foray into the world of publishing was explosive in terms of everything happening to such large degrees in such a condensed period of time. It's very uncommon for most
Mhm.
writers, like as opposed to mine just been a very long, slow, steady climb. Um, so you were almost shell shocked.
Mine was an explosion and then a lot of water on it. Put it
Yeah,
that way.
yeah. So, but and then you stopped writing, and that probably felt necessary. I mean, obviously you pivoted to screenplays, so you were still obviously exercising the creative mind.
And I also got heavily involved in film financing. I virtually was one of the lawyers who created the whole independent financing business, the structure, how to do it. I was having a lot of fun. I was back and forth to Europe, to Cannes, all the festivals. I was putting together so many deals I couldn't keep track of them all
Yeah,
because in those days you could split the rights up in VHS. I had huge deals with HBO and everything else. So I was, in quote, important. I
yeah.
didn't think of myself important, but somewhere in the business I was important.
And and you eventually came back 16 years later to writing. So what was that? What was that like? What was the thing that kind of got you back to the page?
Well, I had just been through two proxy fights for controls of public companies. Those were loads of fun. And I had written part of a part of the book of the Circus of Satan
Okay.
in the 70s, hated it, put it away for 16 years. And I got married again in the 90s, and my new wife, Jill, found the manuscript buried in the closet under cobwebs and read it and said, "Boy, there's a real story here." So I read the thing again, and I said, "I still hate it." And what I had tried to do was to take a very famous murder case in New York in 1912, which broke the power of the Irish mob, and fictionalize the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it didn't work. And then one day I woke up and said, "What am I doing? If I'm going to write this book, I, which is historical fiction, I have to use all real events and all real people
Yeah.
and move my characters through it." I had no idea how difficult this was going to be. So I read about 100 books of research. I read all about the characters, all about the events. Virtually everything in Circus of Satan happened. Even if you think it's not real, it's a real event that I put my fictional characters into.
But did you almost feel that reading all of those nonfiction accounts of your characters that you ultimately fictionalized, but the events were real, did you feel like, oh, this has been covered 100 times? Do I, because I could
No,
see almost that being like depressing.
I didn't fictionalize any of the real characters. They're in there. Moses and Max Annenberg. You know the name Annenberg?
Yeah.
Annenberg, two good gangsters from the early 1900s.
But it
And
didn't dissuade you from telling this story, even though you had clearly, the accounts had been kind of covered before.
it made it better because I moved my characters around the events and used the events to
Got it.
create the destruction of the Irish mob. It took forever to do. I
Yeah.
ain't doing it again. In fact, I'm 300 pages into my next book. It's taken me 4 months to write, not 25 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, you granted you weren't writing that whole time, but
No, I
so
was
you
practicing law.
so you pick the novel back up, you kind of go into this historical fiction with the not which is mostly nonfiction, and I have plenty of nonfiction friends, and I have such an appreciation for how incredibly difficult that is and how respectful you have to be to the past and to what actually happened, even if it's all under the guise of fiction. When did you finally finish the book?
Well, I started rewriting it again in the early, probably 1994, 95, doing a lot of research. And I finally finished it subject to a lot of editing,
Right, right,
a
right, right.
massive amount of editing, because I used the vernaculars, the way they spoke in the Bowery, the way they spoke in Chicago. I couldn't give it to an editor because they say, "Well, you don't have the G at the end of playing." Well, there's no G in Yiddish, and
Yeah,
they
right,
all spoke
right.
Yiddish.
And it's
So,
that balance between being
yeah,
authentic and being
yeah.
readable.
And in Chicago, they couldn't say TH, so they would say dat,
Yeah,
this.
right, right.
Uh,
Just that.
And in Chicago and in St. Louis, they didn't say anything. They just killed people in the streets. So it was the most violent period in American history,
Yeah.
and I had to capture all that. I
So
forgot.
so you finished the book, and
Oh, when
then
did I finish it? I
yeah.
really finished it around 2020.
Wow.
COVID hit, but then I spent about 2.5 years editing it and perfecting it. And I realized something that had no idea of in because it's about the destruction of the Irish mob from 1898 to 1913. There was a movie called Gangs of New York in
Oh yeah.
2003 with Leonardo
Scorsese.
DiCaprio
Yeah.
about the Irish mob in the 1860s. And then in 2011 was the hit series Boardwalk Empire.
Which
And
is
I
great. Yeah.
realized when I was done that I had connected the two. It's the whole middle period.
Oh, that yeah, and those are, I mean, that's a tremendous series, and obviously it's a Hallmark movie. Um, and that yeah, and I can see that you sit right in there because
Right in there.
yeah, because one is prohibition and one is like you said, like late 19th century.
You know,
Um,
by 1900, the Irish mob politicians controlled politics, crime, everything, the police departments in every major city in the country. And it was brutal.
Huh. So you finished this book, and it's been decades since you've gone to market with a novel. What was that experience like?
Well, this one I did differently because I remembered the Sentinel, as big as it became, was rejected by 32 publishers. And the 33rd picked it up for virtually nothing, which was Simon and Schuster.
Yeah.
Picked it up for I think $2,000, and they sold the paperback rights for 600,000,
Yeah.
movie rights for 600,000, and suddenly I had money in my bank account, or I had 10 cents.
Right.
I
Plus the
wasn't even.
royalties, obviously.
Yeah, yeah, and then I made a lot of big foreign deals too.
Yeah.
But I did not want to go through that with this book for a whole bunch of reasons, which I won't get into. Um, I decided that for good or for bad, it ain't going to be a New York Times bestseller or a Publishers Weekly bestseller. I'm going to self-publish it. So
Mm.
me and a very wealthy partner of mine created our own publishing company. We did everything. I
No.
designed the cover. I edited it. We proofed it. My wife was proofing it. He was proofing it because he's excellent with Yiddish, so he could fix all those words that I screwed up. Uh, and then we were going to put up, we did put up a lot of money in advertising and Publishers Weekly and Open Road. We have a giant ad coming out in Variety next week.
Oh, wow.
It's going to cover the whole thing. Hopefully we'll get a mini series out of it or a series. Uh, he's wealthy, so it's not his last dime. I couldn't afford to put up 70, $80,000. You can
Yeah.
trust me on that. So we gave it a shot. It sounds ridiculous, but it was very important to me. I've had a bestseller. I've had a
Right.
monster bestseller. I know what it's like. I'll never equal that again. It was just a phenomena. What was important to me was this was kind of my life story, my life's work.
Yeah.
Took
Yeah.
50 years. I wanted to get it in print, in hardcover. And however it did, it did. The ultimate goal was to turn the book into a mini series or a major 3.5 hour motion picture. And that would take care of the book.
Right.
That would
Well,
propel the
and it
book
all
along.
stays within your vision, right? It's not being edited into something that you don't agree with just to get it, maybe more adherent to the market.
Hey, look, I did things that I'd never done before, including historical fiction. I mean, the original draft was 1,300 pages. It was ridiculous.
Well, this
I
one's not small.
It's
Like,
531 pages, which
yeah,
is about 200 pages more than I would normally write.
right, right,
But I
right,
wanted to tell this
right.
story.
It's
And of
an
course, the
epic.
major
Yeah,
publishers, they don't want a 531-page book from a guy whose bestseller was 50 years ago. They
right.
want a book that's 300 pages. It's too costly.
Yeah, right,
I had to go. It's not in bookstores. You got to buy it online from Amazon or Barnes and Nobles because the discount rate in the bookstores wouldn't make a dime.
right,
The
right.
book is huge. I wanted to tell this story. This was like my guts,
Right, right,
and I
right.
did it.
And still you have all the connections within the entertainment industry, like you were saying, to make either a mini series, and there's no guarantee, right? But getting it in front of people is an exceptionally hard thing to do, and if you can at least do that, that's a huge step, I would think.
Well, I used friendships. I'm friendly with the editor-in-chief, publisher, and CEO of Publishers Weekly.
Yeah,
Variety, I know.
yeah,
One of my best friends was the editor-in-chief for years. I know the business. It's my business in my law practice. That's all I do. Uh, Either I put together movies or I sue the people who screwed them up, um, uh, which is usually the same people. Um, so it's a business I'm comfortable with. I have an advantage. I have a daughter who's a major packaging agent at William Morris, so that helps. Uh,
No.
We'll get it. We'll get it out there.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Right.
All you could do is do your best.
Right.
You can't wish baloney into an elephant. You just
Right.
can't.
No, and it's out there. You've achieved what you wanted to achieve with it. Yeah, at least the first part of it, which is getting the book done and out and available to people.
And plus the fact every single review, there were about 15 of them, was sensational.
That's great.
So that was a plus. Did
Yeah.
I know when I published this book independently whether everyone would read it? But what a piece of garbage.
Yeah.
I didn't
You don't,
know.
yeah, you don't know. You don't, especially when you're self-publishing, you have no sense
No
of,
idea. No idea. And the first explosive great review came out of Publishers Weekly. And the funny thing is, someone said to me, "Well, what if they hate the book?" I said, "Yeah, they hate the book."
yeah.
All I can do is do my best.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's a good note to end on. We're going to wrap up. Before we do, we're going to do our quick storytelling. This is the making it up part of the show where we just kind of choose a random book and a random sentence on a random page. And I read that sentence, and that's the first sentence in a 2 minute long short story we'll make up. So I'm going to read a sentence. You give me the next sentence or two that comes to the top of your head about what happens next. I'll do a sentence or two, and
This is
it'll
going
go.
to be harder. This is going to be harder than appearing before the California Supreme Court, which
I don't know. Well, let's find out. So give me a color of a book, and I'll choose one from the bookshelves behind me.
color of a book.
Yeah, color.
Yeah, I see a blue one over there.
Okay, we'll go blue. Let's see. There's a lot of blue ones.
Yeah, choose anyone. Are they fiction?
Yeah, fiction. Here. I don't know. This one spoke to me. This is Greg Isles' True Evil. That kind of sounds good with the Circus of Satan. 500-page book. So give me a number between 1 and 500.
Page. You know what? Give me the first sentence.
No one has ever done that before. All right, so I'm handcuffed. I have to choose the first sentence. So you do whatever you want with this. Alex Morse charged through the lobby of the new University Medical Center like a doctor to a code call, but she was no doctor.
Yeah. I would, based on my bent with the Sentinel and Guardian and my new book, which is a supernatural thriller. I'm back to the combination of the Exorcist and the French Connection. That description, I would have her as as someone who is on the dark side. She's not a doctor. I would start weaving a plot about somebody who's not a doctor but has strange powers, and those powers are both good and evil.
So
And
then but you got to give me the sentence that follows.
give me the first sentence.
So it just ends, but she was no doctor.
She was no doctor, but she was something that would make any doctor stand in awe.
All right, and then I'll go. She walked down the corridor of the hospital, avoiding the stares from people who surely thought that they recognized her. They didn't know what she was, but they knew she was somebody important.
She avoided their stares because there was something about the stares that enervated the evil part of her personality.
I don't think anyone's ever used the word enervate before. This is great. Their looks were like fuel for her, and sometimes she didn't want that energy. She was focused on her task, and if she became too filled with their emotion, she couldn't guarantee what she might end up doing.
She was an emotionless being with multiple split personalities, some of which came from dark places. And the last thing she wanted to do was to unleash those forces until she was ready to do so.
Oh, I think we end it there. I would read the shit out of that book.
I,
I mean, talk about true evil.
I mean, that's probably what I would do. And my my new book is just about as wild as you can get.
That's
It's all
funny.
it's all about Bon Buddhism. I'm back in Tibet thousands of years ago with demons and creatures in New York and chases and murders and investigations.
Wow. You really like to just try, let's do something totally different this time.
There has never been anything like this book. Nothing. Nothing. And by the time you're done with this book, you will not only understand what Tibetan Bon Buddhism was, which nobody knows.
Yeah,
I
I don't
know.
know it.
It's all laid out, and just how horrendous it was until Buddhism brought it into Buddhism, and still there are remnants. And this all involves the Vietnam War, pilots that were shot down. They disappeared off the face of the earth. Where are they? In New York, murders, investigations. It's intense. But I can guarantee you, anyone who says there's been anything like this ever written ain't telling the truth.
Well, there's nothing like being original. Jeff, what a pleasure to meet you and talk to you and hear about your new book. And wow, congratulations on everything and looking forward to seeing the next one come out.
Well, the Circus of Satan is out there. The new one is going to be called The Bon,
The Bond.
which was Bon, B-O-N, which was the ancient religion of Tibet before Buddhism invaded.
Wow. We'll be on the lookout for it.
Oh, it's coming.
Good talking to you, man.
Hey, this has been great.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. All right, that is it for this episode of Making It Up and for my conversation with Jeffrey Konvitz. That was great. That was very entertaining. He had a lot to say, and I think we did okay on that little storytelling. His new book is The Circus of Satan, and you can read all about it and about him at circusofsatan.com. And then head over to carterwilson.com if you're interested in my books, other episodes of this podcast, my newsletter, hiring me for speaking engagements or for your book club. And, you know, if you're interested in my upcoming 2 to 3 hour seminar on writing thrillers in October, just go to unboundwriter.com and you can read about all the details of that. So I promise another episode should be out next week. I thank you so much for watching and or listening to this one. I hugely appreciate it. Hopefully you're getting information and good advice out of these podcasts. I think you are, because I get some lovely emails from all of you about that. And you can always feel free to reach out to me at carterwilson.com if you have podcast suggestion ideas or just want to say hi. But that's it. That is it for now. We will talk to you next week. Take care.